Would you like to start by talking about Harley Quinn's costume in Suicide Squad?
It's shit.
Okay, and my turn now. This is a Geek Nerd Podcast's production. All songs, sound effects, and themes are used under fair use copyright.
Follow at Geek Nerd Pod on Twitter to keep up with all of Geek Nerd Podcast's projects, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/geeknerd with tiers starting at $1 a month.
Be sure to check out the Geekly's Facebook page at, you guessed it, facebook.com/thegeekly.
As always, the best support is word of mouth. If you like our shows, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, drop us a note on Twitter.
Enjoy the show. Welcome to episode 2 of Versus.
We need, some fighting theme song from, Tekken or Mortal Kombat and somebody to go in saying, fight!
Yeah, I'm going to try and put echo on, the Versus and just see if it works. I think Audacity must have something like that. So if you're listening to this and it's there, then it means I found it in Audacity. Anyway, welcome to episode 2. If you haven't listened to episode 1, go back and listen to that now. It was Space Force versus Upload, which was a hell of a lot of fun. Both created or co-created by the same person, so we put them together. This week, we're doing a Suicide Squad Harley Quinn versus Birds of Prey Harley Quinn. The same character, portrayed by the same actress, but in my mind, they've gone in two different ways with the same character. And we thought it would just be interesting to maybe compare the two, see who we like best. These are the categories and these are the order we'll be going through. Costume, a nice easy one to start off with. Script, fighting prowess, character development. And then the fifth one is basically saying, in both films, we've been given some kind of connective tissue to a film that could have come after this. Just from the Harley Quinn strands of the stories, which would you prefer to see? And at the end, we'll kind of give you the quote-unquote winner. Would you like to start by talking about Harley Quinn's costume in Suicide Squad?
So Harley's costume in Suicide Squad is basically having her wear as little clothing as possible and still kind of be clothed. I'm surprised he didn't put her in a halter top or a bikini top or something one of those midriff things as well.
Should we talk about what it's kind of composed of? She's got her white t-shirt, predominantly white t-shirt. These kind of, I was going to call them short shorts. She wears these kind of high heel boots. She's got the gun holsters, loads of jewellery, including a pudding choker, white makeup. And the white makeup of the white t-shirt I thought was interesting. I've never really noticed it before, but throughout the film it would pick up on dirt and her makeup running and blood. And it was just very much saying that what she does is dirty work. I like that. She was basically turned into a bit of a canvas.
It's interesting that you say that you refer to it as dirty, whereas I saw it as kind of a different thing. Not that she does her work is she gets her hands dirty doing work, but she just kind of looked like a hot mess. It made me think of the drunk girls that used to walk down River Street in Savannah, and they're super high heels and their makeup all smeared and their hair all over the place and puking in a back alley. In Suicide Squad, she didn't seem capable at all.
It kind of, for me, evokes the 2011 Arkham City look. And that is the most, I think with Birds of Prey, which we'll move on to now, they've kind of gone their own way with it. I'm a big fan of things being comics accurate, or you can kind of see the evolution of an outfit or where it's come up to. With Batman, you'll get the cape and cowl. With Harley Quinn, it's a bit different, but I like that I can kind of see where this has come from. They've put their own twist on it.
I like the costumes in Birds of Prey, and I think, okay, if I go back on what I said about Suicide Squad, I think the difference in costumes kind of signifies a difference in Harley herself. In Suicide Squad, she's still very much enthralled with Joker and locked into that relationship, and all of her memories are about memories of her and Joker and their relationship progressing, whereas obviously in Birds of Prey, she's been dumped. And I have to admit, I was kind of pissed off that she got dumped instead of doing the dumping, but whatever. And so, her outfits, she starts out in a very kind of, Harley Quinn-esque outfit with, the striped pants and the kind of black and red halter top. And then as the film progresses, she gets kind of more, and she moves further and further away from that aesthetic and starts wearing kind of, well, more clothes first of all, but also brighter clothes. She transitions to a lot of like yellows and cheery colors towards the end, and I like the fact that she's not just. I mean, granted, Suicide Squad happened over like one evening, and Birds of Prey was kind of over a few. No, it was the same time frame, but she had several outfit changes in the process. The costume felt more like clothes that a woman would go and pick out for herself to wear, whereas Suicide Squad felt like clothes a man would pick out for a woman.
Do you think that's anything to do with one being directed by a woman, one being directed by a man?
Yes.
In a word.
Like, and I know the costume designer for both films was a woman, and people have pointed that out and been like, oh, the costume designer for Suicide Squad was a woman, but the director is the one who tells the costume designer what to do. So yeah, given that is directed by a man, and the way the other women in Suicide Squad were costumed is definitely down to a man objectifying women as sexual objects, whereas Harley, and this will come up later on as well, is more of a person in Birds of Prey than she is in Suicide Squad. And I think the costumes reflect that. And you can read into that whatever you want, whether it's because of Joker, whether it's the male-female director thing, whatever.
I found it really interesting while I was doing research about who the costume designer was for Birds of Prey. There were 13 different looks for Harley Quinn in this film. I couldn't remember all of them, but I knew there were, plenty. And I think you're right. I think it does come down to the director. And I'll bring up one more example of this in the DCEU. Wonder Woman, Themyscira, the Amazons in their armour. And then you go to Justice League, also Themyscira, also the Amazons. And the difference in how much they are covered by their armour is astonishing. Like, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. It's as colourful. I would say it's generally, as the film progresses, it gets slightly more conservative. In the final scene, she wears these kind of yellow/gold dungarees. Again, the white makeup. Again, the white t-shirt. Lex, which way are you going?
Birds of Prey.
I don't disagree with anything you said, but I'm going with Suicide Squad. And that is just purely because of it being reminiscent of things that I've seen in comics. Okay, let's move on to script. Begin wherever you like.
Oh my god. I could rip Suicide Squad apart, and we kind of had this conversation when I was watching it, and you're like, but the error cut, and it's like, yeah, there's no saving this film in terms of the script unless Jeff Johns literally cut together every single line in the film from whatever. It's a train wreck. I don't understand how this got made into a movie, and I don't understand how actors of this caliber read it and were like, yeah, sure, I'll say that. Like, what the fuck, guys? You're better than this. That's really all I can say about Suicide Squad.
But I mean, do you want to talk specifically maybe about Harley's script, or?
Well, yeah, okay. It kind of ties a bit into the character development bit, but I'll kind of mention this. Basically, all Harley says in all of Suicide Squad is these kind of non sequitur quips, and I think once she does like a psychiatric analysis of somebody, but it comes off as feeling disingenuous. I don't know if it's her delivery or the way it's phrased or the moment that it's put in there, because that also happens in Birds of Prey, but it doesn't. Maybe because it only happens once, and everything else she says is just these completely random phrases and this like overemphasis on how crazy she is, which as a legitimately crazy person, like diagnosed crazy, I found that just really offensive, because the way they were having her act is not actually any kind of form of crazy. It's just random nonsense coming out of her mouth. So yeah, she didn't actually have anything meaningful to say or contribute. She was just kind of this presence there to look hot and make funny quips.
I think the one time you're referring to, and I may be mistaken, you know Jane in Doom Patrol, when she does the psychiatrist, she puts on this very specific voice. And I think Harley Quinn put on a specific voice when she was doing that bit of analysis.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that definitely could have been it.
Yeah, I think for my interpretation of Harley's script in Suicide Squad, she was made incredibly infantile, and it made for quite problematic viewing much of the time. She say things like, "I'm known to be quite vexing," and I think for a lot of the film also she was meant to portray a Loki type, and her role or her character direction that the director might have given her was that she's someone that's interested in anarchy and provocation. She didn't say anything meaningful. I completely agree with you. The accent was very kind of animated series accurate, which I liked. We get, like you said, a very brief glimpse into Dr. Harleen Quinzel. But, you know, there isn't much here. And like you said, she is more, I think, to be seen and not heard. Maybe a slight over exaggeration, but she's not, you know, they're not exactly going out of their way to give her compelling script here. What do you think of the Birds of Prey script for Harley Quinn?
I really enjoyed it, and this was actually kind of a surprise for me because the first time we watched it and when we reviewed it, we both completely panned the film, and then I watched it the second time and I actually had a really good time watching it, and I really enjoyed Harley in this film. She did have a lot of the kind of funny quips, but she also said things of substance. There was also a vulnerability to her. I mean, she was kind of the quintessential unreliable narrator, which you would expect Harley Quinn to be. But there were bits and pieces of vulnerability that she kind of let slip, and there were sort of like internal musings and reflections, and you know, like when she was talking about how she dealt with the breakup with Joker, and how well she took it. Meanwhile, we're seeing her like screaming and pounding against the door and sitting in a onesie eating cereal. So we get kind of these contrasting views in this, how she wants to present herself as well as who she actually is. Also, when she did, like, because she diagnosed people several times and she didn't do the funny voice. She did it in the regular Harley voice, and that kind of like very quick, smartassy accent that she does for Harley. And it felt more natural in this. I mean, she also did it more often, so I feel like we got to see more glimpses of Dr. Quinzel as well as Harley. So maybe as part of her evolution of separating herself from Joker, she was kind of becoming more of a whole person and incorporating both the like Harley and Harleen sides of herself into like a unified identity. I could believe that she actually had a PhD in psychiatry based on the way she spoke in this film and the last film. It was like, what the fuck happened to the doctor? Like, there's no remnant of her whatsoever here. I think in this film she came across as more similar to Loki than she did in Suicide Squad. Like, I would say in Suicide Squad maybe it was like a cheap knockoff of Loki, whereas she was much more kind of an agent of chaos in Birds of Prey.
I think we're both potentially in agreement about something. In this, and I don't mean this in a negative way, she's progressed from infantile up to juvenile, if that makes sense. She still comes across in a very childlike manner, but there has been growth, I would say, and that reflects in the script. The thing I liked most about Harley's script in Birds of Prey was that we finally get a sense of the split personality that Suicide Squad didn't really lean into whatsoever. We get something of a conversation between Harley and Quinzel and Harley Quinn, like you said. And she was kind of throwing psychoanalysis out here, there, and everywhere. The bit I really disagree with is that this was more Loki than Suicide Squad, because when I watch this, I get huge Deadpool vibes. The breaking of the fourth wall and her being the narrator, that's very much Deadpool, and I didn't care for that at all. I would have removed that root and stem. I know it was very much her telling this story from her perspective, but I didn't care for that. And the fact that she had a business card as well, she was kind of learning how to spell mercenary throughout the thing. And I think it might have been Suicide Squad rather Birds of Prey, but somebody said, "You've got a mouth on you, haven't you?" So she's a merc with a mouth with a business card. She's breaking the fourth wall. She's doing narration. This film, they went full Deadpool, for my money anyway. The first one, she was just trying to provoke people left and right to get them fighting against each other in a very low-key manner. This was, let's turn her into Deadpool, and I just wasn't into that part of this film. She was very fast-talking, very high energy, as opposed to Suicide Squad. Similar levels of not taking anything seriously to Suicide Squad. For instance, asking Roman to, skip the monologue. A similar level of vulnerability to Suicide Squad, but she felt more of an actualized real human being as opposed to a prop in this via script. That's the real difference.
I just want to talk about the scene where Roman has her tied to the chair, and like you said, she is kind of like making these quips and like, can we just skip the monologue and skip the monologue? And I actually really like that scene because you see the transition for her when it actually kind of clicks that she's not invulnerable anymore. She's being kind of the smartass and provoking him and kind of being her usual crass self. And then Roman is just like, all right, kill her. And like she switches immediately because she realizes that they actually are going to kill her, which she's never had to think about before. And her demeanor does change drastically. And she switches off the kind of smart-ass quips and actually starts like begging and negotiating for her life. And I found that to be a really interesting moment for her character, and also another moment where we get to see her vulnerability, which we didn't get much of in Suicide Squad.
Okay, so the first one was a split, so they got half point each. Script, which way are you going?
Birds of Prey.
I'm also going Birds of Prey, so Birds of Prey gets a point. Let's move on to the next category. Fighting prowess, or just how fucking lethal was she for one film compared to the other. You can take this any direction you like. Lex, begin wherever you like.
Okay, weirdly in Suicide Squad, and I mean maybe not weirdly considering what we've said about it so far, but she didn't actually do that much fighting or killing in Suicide Squad. She did a lot of standing around with a mallet and a baseball bat. She shot her gun once. But yeah, that's kind of basically it. Her fights in Birds of Prey, one, we got, I mean, maybe it's a little unfair to compare Suicide Squad fight scenes with Birds of Prey fight scenes, because in Birds of Prey most of the fight scenes, like, she was kind of the central one, whereas in Suicide Squad they were trying to like focus on an ensemble. But I felt like we got to see more of her actual skills and like the acrobatics, and yes, quite a lot of her kind of dumb luck, but also her ingenuity with fighting. I also found it interesting that she chose primarily non-lethal methods in Birds of Prey, whereas she had her gun in Suicide Squad. I don't think she actually... Maybe she did shoot somebody. Anyway, we had the whole like roller skate, motorcycle, car chase thing, which I thought was really interesting and really neat. We had the theme park fight with all of the Birds of Prey. They seemed better choreographed than Suicide Squad fights. I felt like we got to see more of Harley's actual skills, and she seemed less like a prop.
Yeah, I think ingenuity is a really interesting word, actually, because that's the kind of person she seems to be. Looks around her, what's on offer, a bit of a MacGyver kind of person. What can I find to kill these people with? I think you're right, actually. I think I found it very interesting in Birds of Prey that she was definitely trying to maim and not kill, even though Birds of Prey was R-rated and Suicide Squad was like a PG-13 or something. I think in both films her acrobatics are on display, and her fight, some of her kind of, when she'd flip around, she'd kick people, she'd do these very slow motion fight aspects. I thought they were both, really well done. The difference, I think, between the two films is that in Suicide Squad, she's very much fighting as part of a team. And I think in Birds of Prey, the fight scenes that I remember mostly are the ones where she's by herself. Suicide Squad, she uses, she's got a revolver, she kills someone with flatware, I think, at one point. She's got the baseball bat. That arsenal very much reminds me of, like, the Joker's arsenal. In Birds of Prey, there are similar kind of aspects. She's got the bat, she's got a mallet, but when she brought out the beanbag gun, I think that was a really interesting twist, and there was all the glitter that would come off it and the kind of sparkles.
I loved that scene. It
Yeah.
may be my favorite scene of the film. Like, it was just perfect.
Yeah, it really is a wonderful scene, and it's colourful. And when I think of Harley Quinn, I think of colour. I think of something light and fun, and that was very much it was non-lethal as well, which is fascinating. Then she obviously went back to the archives bit where she'd beat the shit out of people with a metal baseball bat. In both films, I get the sense that she is basically a fearless brawler type who very much just gets on with it. Like you said, she looks around for objects that she can use in her fights. Her mentality seems to be that it's kind of an occupational hazard. Oh well, roll my sleeves up. Who have I got to maim today? Is that kind of thing. And if anything, in both films, she kind of was a little bit blasé about fighting because she's so used to it. Obviously, she had to fight some kind of. I'm not entirely sure what they were in the first film that the Enchantress conjured, but they were just more kind of bodies to add to the list. Really enjoy her fight scenes, but I think the fact that she was fighting alone, she was the focus, as you said, in Birds of Prey, really does make all the difference. It's kind of close, but I'm going to go with Birds of Prey, and that's predominantly because a lot of it she was fighting by herself, no backup throughout Act 1, Act 2, and it was a really good illustration and celebration of Harley Quinn and the fact that she doesn't need anybody to help her.
I mean, it's not even close for me, and it's probably no surprise at this point. But I'm going with Birds of Prey. The fight scenes are just better. I enjoy seeing Harley do what she does, and having the focus be on her. I think in general, like Margot Robbie, it seemed like she felt more comfortable in this version of Harley, just kind of all around. I don't know if it was because she enjoyed the script better, she got along better with the director, she got along better with the cast, or if just because it was the second film with the character, she felt more involved in Harley. I don't know, but it it seemed more natural on her than in Suicide Squad, and I think it also showed in the fight scenes as well.
Yeah, and she does so much training. You see all the photos and the kind of YouTube videos of her in training for the role. It's incredibly impressive. And yeah, I think it might be a case of the fact that when your character's name is kind of on the banner, yeah, you feel like you have to kind of step up in many ways. So that's another point for Birds of Prey. Okay, let's move on to character development. Where are you going to start us off?
Well, like we'll just keep up starting off with Suicide Squad. My claim for Suicide Squad is that there is no character development. She is essentially the same person at the end of the film as she is at the beginning of the film. She's even literally in the same place. The only difference is she has more clothes on and she has an espresso machine. Okay, so our first introduction to Harley, she's kind of like half naked and doing acrobatic things with a sheet from the top of her cage. And in the first, I think it's 5 minutes, the only character who talks in that 5 minutes comments on her attractiveness 3 times. Like, that's our introduction to her. She's hot, a whole lot of crazy, and like he refers to his hotness. A whole lot of crazy and a whole lot of pretty. I forget what the third one is, but it was just like our entire first impression of her is an object, and as we've both mentioned, she kind of remains an object throughout the film. There's a little bit of a side plot of Joker trying to rescue her and her feelings about Joker, her kind of loyalty and devotion to him, and the fact that she wants kind of a normal life with him, or I guess like the Harleen Quinzel side of her sees the normal side of Joker and wants them to have a kind of a conventional traditional life with a family and a house and all of that stuff. The script itself couldn't seem to make up its mind whether she was the leader or Deadshot was the leader, because we got a lot of flashbacks of Harley. We got very little flashbacks of Deadshot, but the film was primarily from Deadshot's perspective, so it was just a weird sort of mix there. I don't really know why she returned to the Suicide Squad after the plane crash, because she didn't have the bomb in her neck anymore. She didn't seem particularly close to any of the other members. It felt like a weird decision for her to come back and decide that she wanted to join them in saving the world when she didn't actually have anything compelling her to do that. I mean, yes, she thought that Joker was dead, but I don't know. I would have imagined that rather than saving the woman that killed Joker, she would have tried to kill the woman that killed Joker. Just would have made more sense to me. Yeah, so I don't think that Harley really had any character development in this film at all.
Oh, that's really interesting, actually. That's really interesting. I've gone basically the completely opposite direction with this. Like you said, when we meet her, she's a woman with this big mythos around her, very much got this kind of reputation. The guards are terrified, and she is just this hyper sexualized individual doing these kind of, I don't even know what you'd call them, in her Belle Rev cell, just like doing these kind of somersaults.
I think it's called like ribbon dancing or something. It's an actual like circus thing.
Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah, and she is the most like one-dimensional character at that moment that you'll ever know. She's known almost entirely for being the Joker's girlfriend. People refer to, well, we actually see the Joker in this film. People refer to, you'll tell him, won't you? Like as if to say, I want to be in the Joker's good book. So they're really kind of kissing her ass the whole way through. This is the guards, not the Suicide Squad. She's got this very cocky attitude. Doesn't need anyone's help. Definitely a solo act at the beginning, and she only seems to be joining this club of, I think they're called like Task Force X at the time. And when she's sold on the idea, she's just going to bide her time because she knows that the Joker's going to rescue her. She's got the phone. I'm coming for you. That's the whole point. She's no interest in kind of getting involved. No interest in being a team player. Then came the helicopter crash, and I found it to be a moment where she went from one-dimensional to two-dimensional because it seemed to genuinely humble her for a time. They came up to her. They didn't sort of say, "Why have you sold us out? Why did you abandon us?" They basically said, "Hey, we're going this way. Come with us." She was. I don't know if she was in the rain or she was crying, but she looked pretty fucking sad, pretty fucking messed up. They knew the helicopter went down and stuff, and they just kind of accepted her at that point. And I felt that there was a kind of vulnerable side that appeared in her where she maybe was being accepted for the first time. I don't know. That was kind of the way I perceived it. And I think at that point she became two-dimensional. Let's say two-dimensional. She goes on to ultimately help, a team save the world. Hers is the most important moment where she doesn't exactly trick Enchantress, but she gets close enough to her to stab her, and that she ultimately gets close enough to kind of give them their in to help them save the world. At the end, yes, she was back in the same cell. Yes, hadn't made a great deal of kind of progression, but she seemed softened by the experience. She was wearing, the orange jumpsuit as opposed to kind of white fucking rags or whatever she was wearing the first time round. And she'd become a team player. And whilst never achieving three-dimensionality, I would say that she hit two dimensions. And I would say there is an arc to her within this film. It's just, I guess, whether the paying audience thought it was enough of an arc. But ultimately, she is a prop. I won't say that this doesn't make her a prop. Ultimately, her script is infantile gobbledygook at best. We've talked about the way she's dressed, but I do believe there is a humbling with the crash and a softening. And yeah, she doesn't learn anything because she immediately goes off with Joker again. But I think I saw some development. I'll say I saw some development here.
Okay, I mean, fair enough. Conversely, in Birds of Prey, I feel like she started off as a three-dimensional character kind of right from the beginning. We sort of get her story told obviously through the lens of an unreliable narrator like the rest of the film, but it's very personalized, and she mentions things that are important to her and that are maybe kind of insignificant to the rest of us. The way she talks about her relationship with Joker, the way she talks about like leaving the orphanage and getting a PhD and becoming a psychiatrist, and she kind of glosses over some failed relationships and gives us a clue as to what sort of mindset she was in when she met Joker and kind of how he was able to sort of worm his way into her, which I'd always wondered about actually. But like getting her that I love the cartoon kind of backstory that they give her. But seeing her actual history kind of was like, oh, okay, so that's why she fell for the Joker. Because it always just seems sort of unbelievable to me. Like, I know, like, in Suicide Squad they said that he brainwashed her, but it was just kind of, I don't know. Anyway, and then, I mean, even the thing about the sandwich, like, that was a very kind of, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it was a very personal thing to her. And I mean, I totally sympathize with that. Like, there are a few things that will absolutely make my day. And like, if I'm having a really shitty day or I feel horrible, it's just like, I just want this one very simple thing to make me feel better.
There's a breakfast in Faversham. It's a fry up at this place called Cosgrove's. That will make or break my day, whether that place is open or not. So I get that completely.
Yeah. As we've both mentioned, we see a bit more of her vulnerability. We see more facets of her. We get to see more of Harley and Quinzel. We kind of see the variety of emotions she goes through after the breakup with Joker, and why she doesn't tell people that she's kind of embarrassed. She's kind of sad. She doesn't want to be exposed to people. She does, like, kind of offhandedly mention that she has a certain status as Joker's girlfriend, but it seems mostly that she's trying to protect herself emotionally rather than just like the way she tells Huntress. Huntress is the first person that she tells that Joker broke up with her, and the way she says it is this sort of kind of miserable hopelessness, I guess. Like she's just kind of given up. And then the moment she decides to kind of pull herself out of this and blow up the chemical factory, like it's a very significant moment for her. And throughout the film, she does go from she waffles back and forth caring about Cassandra Cain, and like I think in some ways she sees herself in Cassandra Cain, and in other ways she kind of feels protective over her, particularly because like Cassandra keeps asking her how to be like her and kind of looks at her as a mentor. And I don't think anybody's really looked at Harley that way or respected Harley that way, and it leaves an impression on her, so that by the end she actually has this real connection with another human being, and which I would imagine she's never actually had before in her life. So yeah, I mean, even the kind of business card she has at the end compared to the business card she has at the beginning, which is somebody else's business card that just kind of like scrawled all over, and then she goes to this very sort of professional, simplistic, kind of actually like elegant business card. Yeah, I feel like by the end of Birds of Prey, she's actually, if not completely found herself, at least started on the path to finding herself again, or becoming her own person. Yeah, I think she has a really interesting character arc in Birds of Prey.
I would agree with pretty much everything you said. I think she starts as two-dimensional, rather than starting one-dimensional. We get that background. I like the animation style as well. She's kind of a solo act. She's just had the breakup. She's drinking. And throughout this whole film, she learns to, find her smile again, as Shawn Michaels might say, and develop and remember maybe a sense of self-worth, maybe one that she's never even had before. And like you said, I think the whole point of the film is the relationship that she makes with the kid, kind of befriending the kid, and she cleans up her act. We never get this whole, like a montage or her put, those scenes where you see people like pouring alcohol down the drain or anything like that. But going from where she was in scene one to where she's with the kid when they're having cereal, she has cleaned up her act entirely. I don't know if she ever quite achieves maternal, but she achieves something, and it's interesting to watch. She ultimately tries to help someone in need, I think, and that was something that she saved the world in the first film, but that was a kind of for her own kind of selfish needs. I think she wanted time off her sentence. She didn't really have a stake in the kid. She just wanted to help her out. And I think you're right. I think maybe she saw something of herself, someone that had been passed over by a lot of people, someone that was potentially going to go down the wrong route if someone didn't intervene in her life. And she finished the film being kind of a chaotic good team player again, similarly to Suicide Squad. So yeah, I think the arc of her was going from solo to team player to someone that's of the opinion, maybe I don't need someone in my life. I need to be happy with me. It was about self-respect, self-actualization, yeah, self-worth, I think, as well. And that was interesting to see. And obviously, the first time we see her driving that big truck, all the tears, and then when we see her driving away, much more happy. Yeah, you can tell that she's been on a journey through the film.
No surprise to anybody. As far as character development goes, I am opting for Birds of Prey.
It's difficult because I'm actually trying to weigh up what's more interesting as a development arc, going from like prop to two dimensionality, or going from sad to happy. I don't know. I'm finding it difficult to kind of split the two. I might have to make this one like a draw, because I think there's been what I would term as growth in both, but different types of growth in both. I'm probably going to go for a draw, which means Birds of Prey wins this one,
Yay!
wins this round. Okay, let's move on to the next category, which is essentially, what sequel would you watch? Would you watch her and the mentee driving off into the distance? What happens next? Or Harley being rescued by Joker and Belle Rev? What happens next with them? Those are the options, essentially. My answer is very much what I thought of the films, I think, and what I thought of Harley within the films. I never want to see any of the three characters that made up the Birds of Prey ever again in any form of media.
Oh, come on. Huntress was great, and so was Black Canary. Montoya, not so much, but I love Huntress. She was so dorky and awkward, which was fantastic, and Black Canary was like so badass and cool. The kid, I could give or take the kid.
The kid, this is a different conversation for a different time, and I remember actually talking about this when we did the review. The kid is a cardboard cutout. And that's it. There is no depth to that character whatsoever. There is no arc. There is nothing. That kid is a vessel for the diamond. End of story. As much as Harley's a prop in the first film, the kid is a prop in this film. Those are my unshakable beliefs, unfortunately. What I would love to have seen, and I think it's obviously never going to happen now, is all of the Joker Harley stuff taken out of Suicide Squad and just have a Suicide Squad film. And then all of that stuff maybe is the beginning of the Joker Harley Quinn film, which we get directly. We find out literally what happens next as they leave Belle Rev. That would have been something I'd be really interested to see. For me, it's no contest Suicide Squad for that one.
You take Birds of Prey Harley and Suicide Squad Joker and make a film out of them escaping and then leading to the breakup and then into Birds of Prey. Like, I would want that film. So rather than a sequel, it's kind of like a prequel to Birds of Prey. Does that make sense? Like, it's sort of a sequel to Suicide Squad, but it also connects Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey.
I'm taking the average of what you said, and I think that's a Suicide Squad victory, I think.
Oh, man.
I think you're going half and half, like I did in the previous category, and I'm going the full way. So I think this shakes out as a Suicide Squad victory. So I think if I've been keeping score correctly, the final scores are 3.5 to Birds of Prey, 1.5 to Suicide Squad. That is the Harley we prefer, which is, for my money, very interesting because, as I said, I like this viewing of Suicide Squad far more than I like the first one. And I liked this viewing of Birds of Prey far less than I think I did. This is only the second time I've seen it. It's probably the last time I'll ever see it as well. So yeah, I find it interesting that Birds of Prey Harley has won.
I was actually really surprised because I even asked my partner, I was like, did I like Birds of Prey before? Because I don't think I remember liking it, but like, it was just really, really fun this time, and I appreciated the characters, and I think maybe like the first time I saw it, I was expecting a more comic booky movie, and it's not really a comic booky movie. It has comic book characters, but it's more of a sort of an actiony drama type. I don't know if it has a genre, but I don't think it's like the stereotypical, MCU, DCEU film. I think it's kind of merging into its own territory, and I enjoyed having primarily women kicking ass. I don't think we get enough of that. I mean, even in Wonder Woman, her entire group was men, and they sort of, granted, it was like 1940s or whatever, but they sort of treated her like a delicate female, even though she was stronger than all of them. I mean, we'll see what 84 is like. But yeah, I really enjoyed seeing stories that we don't normally see, and kind of a comic book movie that didn't follow the sort of standard arc. I mean, like, yes, she had a traumatic childhood, but we didn't really linger on the traumatic childhood, and she wasn't really like morose and brooding because she had a traumatic childhood, unlike certain people in Gotham.
Whoever do you mean, Lex?
And she did sort of have this openness to the world where, and I think you sort of mentioned it when we were talking about fighting prowess, that like she came across as just kind of ready for everything and very adaptable. And we got to see some kind of moral conflicts a little bit, like when Harley's about to be raped in the alleyway, and Black Canary kind of walks by like, this is none of my business, but then the more she's there, she's like, fuck, I have to do something about this. Similarly, Huntress is just like practicing in the mirror how to deliver her serious line, and the fact that nobody lets her actually say who she is, and just her general kind of awkwardness, when we're usually like, assassins are usually like super charismatic and stuff, which is sort of ridiculous because their whole thing is they live and work alone, so yeah, they're going to be socially awkward.
While we're doing this, I'm going to have to go into some of my thoughts. I want to preface it by saying I get that there are people who for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years have been waiting for this exact film, maybe even longer. The past 30 years of superhero films have been aimed squarely at me. I'm male. They've been aimed almost exclusively directly at me. I'm white as well. Like, I get that. And this film, I'm so thrilled that people can watch this and say, this is a different kind of story. That's someone I can aspire to. That's something I can relate to. It has a lot of the kind of, I would say, hallmarks of a chick flick rom-com breakup film where, all the kind of trope characters are there. You've got Harley, who's had the breakup. You've got Canary, who's like the best friend. You've got Huntress, who is the woman that's not really ever had female friends before, that kind of character. You've got the older character who has all the experience in the world. You've got the younger character who has none of the experience. And I think that was most emphasised when she looked at the dartboard and saw Joker and was like, who's that? That was kind of a metaphor for her not having any sort of sense of what Harley's going through, or, relationships in general. That was, to me, kind of all the film was. I don't like the use of non-linear narrative. The villain is possibly the worst villain in all of the DCEU. It's not a film for me. It's not a film I will probably ever watch again. And yeah, like I said, I just find it weird that this was the most enjoyable, maybe the third or fourth time I've seen Suicide Squad, and the most enjoyable time I've had with that film. I don't really know why. I think it might be because of, we might have seen Altered Carbon since I last saw it, and Joel Kinnamon is just one of my favourite people on the planet at the moment.
It is so weird because, like, when I was watching Suicide Squad, I was trying to see Takeshi Kovacs in him, and it just like, I mean, obviously, there's the facial hair. He doesn't have the facial hair in Altered Carbon, but even like his speech patterns, his mannerisms, the timbre of his voice. I was like, I know you're Takeshi Kovacs, but I don't see him in you. It was a really weird experience.
Yeah, he has this level of vulnerability when he's Rick Flag, because obviously everything is going on with Huntress. But as Takeshi Kovacs, he's basically this like strong, silent, emotionally invulnerable human being.
Yeah, like I've only seen him in Suicide Squad and Altered Carbon, and the difference between the two characters is like night and day. I mean, even knowing that they're the same person, it's just like, fuck. Similarly, like, oh well, never mind. I'll talk about it tomorrow.
No, do it now. Go for it.
Gustav Skarsgård is in Cursed, which we're reviewing for Patreon. And he played Carl Strand in Westworld Season 2 and Floki in Vikings, and plays Merlin in Cursed. And I was watching him and I was thinking, I know this guy. He looks kind of like Alexander Skarsgård. So I looked him up and was like, oh, it's that guy. It's his brother. So yeah, that's why they look alike. But some of his mannerisms, I was kind of like, that he seems a lot like Floki, who is very obviously kind of a Loki-esque character, but very, very different than Carl Strand. And I was shocked that Gustav Skarsgård played Carl Strand, who's the head of security, or the head of the containment team that comes in after the massacre in Westworld Season 2.
I hadn't put it together, but as soon as you said Westworld, I thought, who the fuck was he in Westworld Series 2? And then, like a light bulb,
Uh-huh.
That is astonishing. That is
Yeah.
genuinely astonishing.
It is like complete like, and then after that I was watching Kirsten just like trying to see Carl Strand in there, and I mean like picturing Carl Strand in my head and being like, that can't be the same person, it can't be the same person. So yeah, like I really love these actors that are able to just kind of morph into different people, and you look at them and you know that it's the same actor, but it's like completely different people. I just think that's super amazing. It's such it takes a lot of talent to be able to do that.
Yeah. I think when the Suicide Squad comes out, we might have to compare a third Harley Quinn. But also, I'm interested to see what Rick Flag is like in that film because I think he's staying on, even though it's quote unquote a soft reboot. I think three or four of them might be staying on, and I know that Joel Kinnamon will be. So, yeah, that might end up being the fourth, piece of work I've seen him in. But yeah, he's a good lad.
I'm tempted to say we should do a Suicide Squad versus Suicide Squad, but I really don't want to watch David Ayer's Suicide Squad again.
It's weird if you'd said to me a week ago and said, "Oh, like I'm not really looking forward to it." Now, like I feel so much more positive about Suicide Squad. It's really weird because at the bottom of my DCEU table, it's been a constant dogfight between Birds of Prey and Suicide Squad, for which I think is the worst film. And Suicide Squad has been there, I shit you not, the entire time since I first saw it in the cinema. This has legitimately changed Birds of Prey to the foot of the table now, and I'm as shocked as anyone because this is the one where the mechanics of Suicide Squad are wrong. Like it's wrong in the edit, and it's wrong in the fact that two stories have been put together. Like there are mechanical issues as well as other issues. Birds of Prey, I'm just so like removed from the story and what they're trying to say. Yeah, Suicide Squad has crept up the table. Let's watch it again.
It's interesting that like in this watching of Suicide Squad, we've both kind of had dramatic changes in our feelings towards it. Because like I remember being super excited for Suicide Squad to come out, like all the previews, the actors that were in it, everything, the kind of initial teasing concepts. I was like, this is going to be a great film. This is going to be super awesome. And then we watched it, and it was like, is not so awesome. That just makes me sad. I wanted an awesome film and I wanted Joker, and it was supposed to be great. They told me it was going to be great. It was not. But I sort of clung on to the like Joker Harley storyline and was like, well, maybe that's enough to redeem the film. Maybe that that storyline is good. The rest of it is shit, but that storyline is good. And then like I watched it this time and I'm just like, no, fuck this. He ruined everything. He took my dream and he smashed it, and I will never forgive him.
I'm as interested to see the Air cut of the Suicide Squad as I am the Snyder cut of Justice League.
I am not interested in seeing either. I will, of course, watch both. There are problems I have with Suicide Squad that editing wouldn't have changed, and they're like fundamental, really offensive problems. So, yeah, he's dead to me now.
We always have these conversations where you're like, well, I think Batman versus Superman is fucking shit, the worst
Well,
from the DCU. I say to you, Suicide Squad is fucking shit. It's the worst film. We always have this. Where do you stand now?
Batman versus Superman is just slightly above Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad is in the fucking basement, and Batman versus Superman is just
Batman
laying on
versus
top of
Suicide
it.
Squad is a film I would watch.
I would watch that too. They have to bring the Joker back for that. Jared Leto's Joker. I'm not giving up Jared Leto's Joker. I like that Joker.
You've actually reminded me of a question. I had a question, would you believe, to ask you, Lex, about this film. Do you think that they should have just done a very brave thing and killed Jared Leto's Joker in the helicopter crash?
No. I mean, like, I know that Heath Ledger's Joker got killed in the Dark Knight trilogy, and I've always kind of had a problem with that. I mean, I love Heath Ledger's Joker. He's probably, like, my top Joker is, like, Heath Ledger, then Jared Leto, then Jack Nicholson. I have issues with Jack Nicholson's Joker, but a lot of that is time period related. The Joker is kind of like a Loki character, is Loki for the DC universe, and similar to Loki, if you kill Joker, you kill a very quintessential part of Batman. I don't think either of them can exist without the other. And I think Heath Ledger's Joker says that in one of the films, that they need each other to survive. They're two sides of the same coin, basically. And so I think if Joker dies, Batman has to as well. That's just what has to happen. I mean, maybe one day it will be the end for Batman, and I think that would be kind of a really interesting thing where, you know, they do kind of a Sherlock Moriarty death thing, or a Hannibal and Will thing. But yeah, I don't think Batman could go on without Joker.
Knowing what we know now in the DCEU, I would consider it, killing Jared Leto in this moment, because obviously he's not really reprised the role. He didn't reprise the role in Birds of Prey. He may potentially never come back. You know, Morbius is coming out. It might be a smash hit. It looks fucking fantastic. He could be in a trilogy of that. You never know. But in the context of the DCEU, just because of, you know, what has unfortunately happened with the Batman character, I would have considered it. But that would only be with the power of hindsight. It's interesting as well that you talk about how they are two sides of the same coin, and that conversation in The Dark Knight between the Joker and Batman is possibly my favourite bit of the film. I really like the bit where Joker's head is out of the car like a dog, you know, going to the beach. You know, that bit I really enjoy. No words, just kind of music to it. They are just starting a comic run called Joker War at the moment, which I'm so excited to start reading. Apparently Joker has come to the decision that the Batman has to now die. And I think it starts in something like issue 95 of the Rebirth Batman comic.
Isn't that the same as like the Battle of Jokes and Riddles that came out like around this time last year?
Well, yeah, that was between Joker and Riddler. One of them was supposedly
Right.
going to die, but they ended up, I think, becoming friends again afterwards. So I'm interested to read this and to see where it goes, because I mean, you never know. They might end it with I can't remember what it's called, like the Reichenbach Falls or something, where
Yeah.
Holmes and Moriarty go over. They might end with something like that. I think Harry Potter and Voldemort did something similar, but it didn't quite have the same effect. And you never know, that might be the end, and then a new run of Batman might start where they just, you know, Deus Ex Machina, or sorry, tabula rasa kind of situation.
I think that if they were going to end Batman, that Batman and Joker would have to die in this sort of ambiguous way where they could have survived. We don't know. We presume they're dead, but like the bodies are never found, and it's kind of this mystery of what actually happened to Batman and the Joker.
Yeah, you can imagine a Batman would come back and a Joker would come back, but obviously you'd never know if it was the same people under the masks. Thanks very much for listening to episode 2 of Versus. If you've got any suggestions for things we should compare, please send them to us. The next one we're doing, I think, is the first 2 Avengers films, which were both directed by Joss Whedon. And the one we're doing after that is What We Do in the Shadows, the film, and What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show. And then we're doing something with Repo Man.
Yes, we are doing Repo, the Genetic Opera, which is a very little known cult film, but was the inspiration for Jude Law's Repo Man. And so we're going to compare the two of them.
And I've never seen or heard of either of them, I don't think.
It's really cool because like the Genetic Opera is basically like a goth rock opera. So it's so cool.
That's what I think I was hoping Blood Machines would be.
Well, you will get it in October.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, cool. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.